just before we start, I just want to do a quick show of hands. How many of you are looking to expand outside the US? So out from here to there. Okay. And the opposite, from there to here. Okay, that's a fairly even crowd. So we actually have the talent here to answer all your questions. So let's start with some introductions. Maybe if you want to start first, and I know we are kind of the minority here.
It's not bad about it. Hi, I'm Matt. I am the founder and CEO of Paragon 1, and we are a college career center that actually works for students. Our focus is on building an alternative path for students in conjunction with college, or eventually maybe not. The focus is on just the things you need to know to get a job or an internship, something that most schools don't actually teach, surprisingly. We actually started the business when I was doing some work in the education market between China and the US. A friend of mine had actually started a test prep business, and a lot of the students that he had worked with were finding it very challenging to get help from their career center, from their university, on basic things like resume and cover letter, much less how do I form a network, how do I prepare for interviews. You're spending thousands of hours studying for tests, but you're not actually doing anything to prepare for an interview. So we saw that there was a real pain point there. We started building out a solution that is an automated assessment that produces a customized learning plan and then matches students up with professionals in whatever field they care about. And we help these professionals become part-time coaches by giving them just the right amount of training, just the right amount of content so that they can plug in and quickly get the student up to speed. Before this, we're currently going through Y Combinator right now. And we also have the former CTO of Tencent as an investor. Before this, I co-founded an e-commerce company called Aha Life that's listed in Australia.
Right. Yin?
Hi, I'm Cheryl.
Sorry, Cheryl.
Cheryl Yeoh. I started my first startup in New York City and raised some funding there, and then moved here, and then exited a couple of years ago to Walmart Labs. It was a shopping list coupon app called Reclip It. And then shortly after that, when I was working at Walmart.com, the government of Malaysia invited me to go back to Southeast Asia, to Malaysia, to launch a startup accelerator that was focused on the ASEAN market. And President Obama actually came to launch my organization that was called MAGIC. It stands for the Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center. So really targeting the 600 million people in Southeast Asia. I mean, the US market is 300 million, and then little that people know that there's a huge market out there called Southeast Asia. And so we did a lot of stuff and did launch an academy as well to teach people how to code and do design and things like that. And it was a 2-year gig for me, and I came back to the US last year, and now I am Chief Marketing Officer at Hack Reactor. We train people how to code in 3 months in JavaScript.
Sandira, so you're the example of an entrepreneur coming from Europe to the US.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Sandira. So I was actually born and raised in France. I'm a high school dropout. I started at 16 doing front-end dev and starting a company in London. Then I came back to France during the dot-com bubble. Was at a company that became eBay. I was 18 years old then. After that, I'm 21. I moved to New York City for the American dream. I was not very fashionable to be French at the time. The French president had vetoed the war in Iraq. So it was the whole freedom fries era. But that was really interesting. At that point, I jumped into mobile. Was one of the first evangelists for QR codes in the US. And then I did a bunch of startups. To be honest, part of it was because of immigration restrictions. They were the ones sponsoring. And then after that, I wanted to have a different experience of the US. I moved to Seattle. And I got swallowed into civic technology. That was the first time I got into that. I learned a lot about American politics. But I also worked on the early stage investment side, locally and, yeah, actually locally. And then I moved to San Francisco, because if you're going to be in tech, at some point or another, you have a stint here. And I felt like I was, even though I had 15, 16 years of experience, I felt like a theater stage actress coming to Hollywood. Like I had the skills, but I was still very intimidated, so that was interesting. And at that point, I was very interested in leveraging technology to solve infrastructure problems, so I joined a company called Open Garden, which launched FireChat, which powered the Hong Kong Revolution. And that was also very interesting. And I wanted to do a Series A. That was a good way of getting to know the ecosystem, the VCs. And so we did that. It was exciting. In parallel, I was working on another startup. And I became the CEO of that. So it was a 3D holographic computing platform. All through that time, a lot of things happened. And well, to make it short, I never noticed I was a woman or brownie before I moved to the Bay Area in all this time in technology. And so I became very aware, and I thought, wow, there's something interesting. What can I do about this? And so I thought maybe on the investment side, I could have an impact. That was still not enough. And so I recently joined a company called ShareProgress. I'm the creative director there. I head the creative tech department. And what we do is we support progressive causes by leveraging creative technology. This is really exciting.
So examples of the
so
process?
We support so environmental, civic, and social Greenpeace, AFL-CIO. Credo Mobile, which is a MVNO that's sitting on top of Verizon. And they give part of their profits to support progressive causes. We're very active about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So before you start, Ben, so who's actually in a hardware startup? Who's doing hardware? Hardware? All right. Well, Ben, it's okay if you have to divert. I'm just kidding.
No. Hi, I'm Ben. I currently lead up Indiegogo's China program. So we find awesome companies in China and help them launch into the US market. Before that, I was doing our main product launch and have helped hundreds of startups from all around the world launch products through crowdfunding. So yeah, that's me.
Right.
I got my own mic. Hi everybody, my name is Yin. I'm a Chinese-born, Germany-raised Canadian-American married to a Costa Rican. I do global business. So I started my career as a strategy consultant in the Berlin office of the Boston Consulting Group, then eventually transferred back to my birthplace of Beijing. So that entire time I worked with large multinationals on their Asia growth strategy. In 2010, my skin allergies got so bad, I felt like Beijing was physically rejecting me due to the pollution. So I decided to pack my bags, come back to the States, come to Silicon Valley. And I had never done anything in tech, but I needed to get into the clean tech industry to contribute a little bit towards what will hopefully be the solution that will allow me to live longer term in my birthplace again. So that's how I ended up in tech. I've been doing international business development at all the different startups I worked at, and about 3 years ago, a former boss of mine and I got together and decided to found Compass. So our company makes enterprise software that growth stage companies use to manage and plan their international expansion. So if you think about global growth, it's art and science. And the science piece is what we've taken and tried to make into a standardized framework so that a lot of the things that you do over and over and over again can be done in a much more efficient manner. And we can concentrate our efforts into the analyzing and making the decisions instead of mechanically trying to gather, collaborate on gathering the data and then making sense of it and visualizing it so you can make decisions based on that. So I'm based here, have been here for 6 years, but I travel quite a bit. And our company, the companies we work with, our clients are based pretty much all over the world and also are expanding into all other regions.
Great. Nora, I think you have a mic as well. Yeah. So another European perspective.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Nora. So I'm actually into 3D printing. So I started in France, so I guess we have a few French people here. So I started with Sculpteo in France in 2010. So I was the main salesperson there, so basically built the sales all over the world from there. So we didn't have any other office than the one in France. In 2012, we actually realized that 30% of our revenue, global revenue, was coming from the US, and especially here from the Bay Area. So that was a time for us to actually decide, well, let's do something there and have an actual person there. So that's when I arrived here. So opened the office here, made a few mistakes. Finally, now we're getting our head out of the water. But yeah, I'll talk more about this during the panel, but a few mistakes we did in the beginning. So I had to learn what to do, what not to do.
Great, that's actually a great segue. Because the first question that I get from people who are thinking of going global is why? Why should I go global? I mean, I don't know, I'm in China, but you know, it's 1.4 billion people. I don't know how many WeChat, but that's I think close to 800 million people, which is the total number of people on the internet in China. So WeChat is WeChat is Tencent, by the way. So why? I mean, when you're in China, you're here in Silicon Valley in the US. That's also a huge market. France, maybe, you know, but you're Europe, so that's another huge market. So why would you go outside of, you know, your comfort zone, outside and try to compete with, you know, in a market that you don't know, against big companies, much bigger than you. So maybe you can start, Nora, about what would you want to go there?
Yeah, so we don't have the experience in China yet. So for now, our offices are in France and here. But we are building factories. So we're using industrial grade printers. So it's a really heavy investment. The printers we're talking about, it's starting at $500,000. So that's quite an investment. And so we're having more than 60 different materials. Imagine that for each of the materials family we have, it's a different printer. So that gives you an idea of the kind of investment we're talking about. So we had to be very cautious of where we would go and why we would go there. So in our case of Sculpteo, we actually decided to come here because our customers were here. And so we also were at this time exploring a new offer, going more into the software. So Bay Area was really making sense for us on both, like, well, our customers are here and we want to expand on software, and this is where you have to be for that. But then talking about other companies, you really have to see where you are right now, where you want to go, on what market you want to go, and what's investment to go there. For us, for example, going to China today would be a little bit complicated just because we would have to translate an entire website. And it's pages and pages and the technology, and we have, everything is coded in a way that we would need to hire local teams. We would have to build a factory there. I mean, there's a lot of investment we have to consider. So right now we're actually trying to expand as much as we can in Europe, as much as we can here, but you also have to see what's the size of your market. For us, the US market was enough, still enough today, sort of. And actually even going, I mean, tomorrow we're opening a market of more than $1 billion per, you know, like China. Well, I don't even know how we would do this. I think I would have to turn down some customers, and we don't want to be in this position. So actually we're going to wait until we're up to the scale and then go there. So that would be my perspective from Sculpteo.
Cheryl.
So I think it doesn't make sense completely for a startup to expand to a different market if you're a startup. Unless you're like making, I don't know, like $100 million in revenue, then maybe you can start thinking about expanding. Unless, so there's an exception, unless your business model fundamentally is related to an audience in that country, that market, like Matt's model is fundamentally connecting Chinese and the US market together, right? Two more other examples. There's a company in LA that raised a ton of money on Kickstarter. It's called Superbook, where the business model was basically built on the fact that there's a lot of people in developing markets like Southeast Asia and China that is mobile first. They don't even know laptops, they don't even know, they don't own a computer. But you can't do a lot of stuff on the mobile, right? Sometimes you do need a laptop to do more stuff. So what they're doing is they're creating this Superbook, which is a shell that plugs into your mobile phone. And they raised, like, I think a few million, $4 million here. But this product fundamentally is for a developing market, so it makes sense for them. Although they raised money here and started here, to enter the Southeast Asian and China market. So that makes sense for expansion. Another company is my friend who spent a year he's from New York, he spent a year in China. He wanted to bring Chinese dramas to the US market. Then it also makes sense to do the connection. Then the other, so those are like reasons why you would expand cross borders, right? And then the other reason for you to think globally could be that maybe you don't want to focus on the US market at all. It's very saturated in Silicon Valley. A lot of people are building companies here. So for example, what I did in Magic in Southeast Asia is bringing awareness to that market. It is a very young market. There's a lot of white space, a lot of technology and products that we here already have and take for granted isn't really built there yet. So then, as an entrepreneur, maybe you want to go there and build a product there for that market because nobody, we heard Bo say just now, there's not enough good startups in China. Maybe you want to be that entrepreneur to build that product in that market, then focus on that market and not here and there, just go there and build that company there.
Right. In addition, just before you start, Sandira, in addition with what you said, Cheryl, is when I talk to investors and entrepreneurs, I mean, the first thing that they say is focus. So you're absolutely right. I mean, if you have to focus on your strength, and if that means to go global or go outside of your geographical area, then do it. But if it doesn't, then you have to focus on your business, the actual current business that you're doing. Sandira?
Yeah, absolutely. We had the case at Scanbars. There was a company I was heading business development and marketing for back in New York. And as a startup, you can't really afford luxury-based decision. So it was really out of necessity. What happened at the time is there was a big lawsuit in the QR space in the US. So it was very difficult to get funding. It was very difficult to get anything done. There was adoption. It was just very, very complicated. And it turns out that Asia was just more mature about such a product. So China was where the activity started to happen, and so we decided to focus it to the point where I was asked to move to Shanghai. It was not in my personal plan to do that, and I decided to do something else, travel to Mongolia. But yeah, so the company really focused, and I remember some of the challenges we had at the time, and I don't know if that's still the case today, I'm interested in learning if that's the case, is China is divided into numerous provinces, and so we had to do one agreement for each province in order to deploy over there. So yeah, I'd be interested in seeing if Tencent could help with facilitating that deployment.
Right. Yin, you want to add something? Yin. Okay.
I'll be fast. So this is a fundamental question I deal with every single day. Okay? The companies that we work with oftentimes want to go global because it creates enterprise value. They are funded by other investors who on purpose gave them a lot of money, and part of that money they're supposed to use to expand their global footprint because these investors have recognized that whatever product or service that provide has global relevance. Sometimes we work with companies that have already gone global by accident. Okay? How does that happen? You have a multinational client who loves your product. So it's a luxury problem, but they immediately say, we want your product in all 25 of our international subsidiaries. Are you going to say no to your biggest client? No, right? So then it becomes a scramble. How are we going to get ready to serve our biggest client in all of these different geographies? And they come to us and say, yeah, we need a structure somehow to figure out how to go about this in a very measured way, in a structured way, so that we come back to our client and say, we're not saying no to you, but this is the way we think about global. These are the companies where we can actually support you, and we want to do it in this particular order so that we can promise to deliver it to our standards. And then sometimes you get the golden opportunity of signing a partnership, and your partner will take you to all these different markets and help you open up the market. And so you don't have to have the in-house knowledge, but rather rely on a third party. So I worked for a company that was a Series B. We had 13 employees. They were in the data visualization space, and they were one of the main partners for the Google Earth and Maps team. Okay, so they built data visualization on top of Google Earth and Maps, so that was their killer app. And Google took this company from the US, first to where? To Southeast Asia, right? Speaking of Southeast Asia. So the two biggest deals that they signed, over $1 million, were in the Philippines and in Indonesia. Was that expected? No. But did it work? Right? Yes.
Right. So I think the takeaway there is if you have a customer, a partner, or maybe users, they will take you to new places. I mean, Facebook, I remember when they started, Mark Zuckerberg didn't think about going to France, for example. But they realized that the biggest number of users outside of the US was actually in France, in Italy. And they were translating, to your point, Nora, they were translating Facebook for free. So I think, yes, if you have customers, partners, or even users, you should go. So Ben, maybe a more of a Chinese perspective. You work with all those Chinese startups, and they want to sell here. They want to come here, right?
Yeah, I would say first probably don't launch globally. It's really hard, and I think if it meets a specific need and your strategy, there's a really clear reason to launch internationally, but it's not a magic wand that helps, and there's no boxed version of oh, we just go do this here. Especially China, but every country is different, and there's no playbook you can probably follow that's going to be helpful. It's stumbling around, and if you haven't established your product market fit and aren't already totally killing it in your local market, it's extremely rare that another market's going to be easier. It's just all the problems you already have, plus language, plus culture, plus time differences, plus logistics. For companies we work with, there are some really, three big reasons that Chinese companies use us to launch in the US. The first, and I think the one that I would be most excited about, is we just want to go, and there's a big market over here that's maybe less competitive than China is right now, because the Chinese market is extremely competitive for startups. Or there's just a really specific user base that you can chase here. The second reason would be they just want a US brand. I think the US brand of product and company is really good in China. And if a Chinese company comes here, launches in the US, they might actually not care about long-term sales here. They just want to go back to China as a quote-unquote Western brand and get better sales numbers with the brand they see as improved. And then the third reason is they just want to prove to an investor that they can do international, so they can raise another round as big. I think the long-term growth strategy is one that I'm more excited about, because I think it's a sign that the team is thinking to that length. But I think those can all be valid, but they're all strategies. This isn't we're launching because we've heard international is good. We have a really specific goal that this international launch means. And I also work with companies that are often in hardware, where they can skip a lot of the really hard problems that software has. If you have an electric scooter, you don't need to localize anything. I push a button and I scoot around the city. That's going to work in any place I send it, versus something with a really heavy software backend where the user experience that works where you are is going to need at least to be in a different language, but maybe have a completely different look if you're trying to have customers interact with it in a place where you don't know how it works. If you're used to everybody gets to your app from WeChat, it might be really hard to go to US customers who are not going to understand that at all. So it's a scary thing that you should have a really good reason to do, and it makes sense.
Right, so what I take away from what we're saying is actually, despite the political situation here in the US, the made in America, or being an American, image is great. So you and I concur, and I see the same thing in Europe. You don't want to appear European, you don't want to appear Chinese. You want to appear American, and you go back to your home market and say, here, this is.
I do think that's changing. I think DJI is super proud to be a Shenzhen brand. And that's not for everybody, but I do think there's some products that it's a really good fit.
Yeah, that's a great example. Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of the things here. Your startup, start enough. Don't try to go into a new market, period. Pick a market from day one and stick to it. And in our case, I wouldn't say our product is not in China, but our customer acquisition, a lot of it is in China, because we're trying to, we decided early on, maybe one day we'll go to universities and schools and hopefully sell what we're doing, but right now, we want to go to parents. Parents are in China for our international students who are here, so the best way to get to them is good old-fashioned, going there, doing events, and meeting them and talking to them in person. So I would say that, China might be, in our case, it's like a core part of our strategy. The other thing I would say is that you also can't do like a drive-by in China, call it in, right? Like a lot of people are like, oh, I met someone, and let's get on a conference call, and they're really excited over there, and they're like, yeah, this sounds great what you're building, and they're like, wow, that sounded really good, let's, keep talking to them, and you do a deal, right? And you just kind of are doing it over the phone, and it feels like you're making progress, and you ship some products over there, and then nothing happens, and that's actually what happened to us at my last company. We were doing e-commerce deals with China, and we thought, oh, this company over here wants to distribute our products. It's amazing. It was a big waste of time. So even, you may say, oh, I'll just make a trip to China. It's a big deal, right? You make all the way to China, it's a lot of money, a lot of time, do a whole week trip there, and you meet all these people, and they're like, we love what you're doing, we love what you're doing. Like, let's do something, and you come back and you're like telling your team, hey, I think we should do this thing in China, because everyone's really excited. And then you waste a lot of time and nothing happens. And you make another trip and everyone's still excited, you waste a lot of time and nothing happens. And so I made 8 trips to China separately last year. And I did that, the first few trips I made were 5 the year before, and that was like laying the groundwork. I was actually doing some consulting work on the side that brought me there, that would pay. But you have to, if you're not moving there, then you have to be making that many trips. Like, that's how serious you need to be. Because if you're not there, you're not in front of people, they don't really take you seriously. They will not tell you no. They will not say, actually, you know what, you're wasting your time, which is what they should say, but they're gonna make you feel like, hey, you're great, you're from America, whatever you're building is awesome, right? So you have to read between the lines, and I'm not Chinese. I don't speak Mandarin, really. Wo de putong bu hao, I can get by a little bit. But I have a really amazing team member, our VP of BizDev who's here, and she grew up in China, went to school here, worked here for a long time, and now she's going back and working. So I need someone, so the other thing is, if you're not from China, and I would say even if you're like ABC, you need people who are from China, who have been here long enough, and they can go back. Because if you go with someone who's too local, and they don't understand the American side enough, that can be a problem. Not for just getting shit done, but I mean building your team, right? And if you go with someone from the US who speaks Mandarin but hasn't really spent a lot of time there, it's also not good enough. So it's a very delicate thing. Anyways,
No, it's actually a very important point. I mean, in China, one thing that's important is what they call guangxi, the network. So it's not what you know, it's not what you have, it's who you know, and that you have to build it. I mean, just like if you're coming here to the US and you have to build your network, you have to know. But in China, it's just a level more complicated, especially if you don't speak the language, if you don't know the custom, etc. Yeah, Cheryl.
I'll offer a different perspective of companies here in the Valley, mostly hardware companies. I didn't see a lot of hands for people working in hardware companies, and Ben can chime in too. A lot of companies here, as you know, I raised money on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and then they built a cool video of what they're going to sell you, and then you think it's cool and you fund it. Most of the time, they're 3D printing their product, or they did a prototyping thing here. And then once they raised, I think above 2 million, these companies in China had already seen your product and copied it. And then you just assume that, oh, I can just fly into Shenzhen and meet manufacturers and component vendors and just assemble the product. And then they charge I don't know, 200x margin, right, or something, 20% margin. because they already know what you're trying to do. So I guess this is a really common mistake for hardware entrepreneurs here that we're seeing a lot. So I guess the tip here is that go to China and create those relationships. It takes years to build them before you actually think about raising money on this startup, this hardware startup, because it does take time. Do all your component sourcing and all your technical diagrams first before you actually raise money. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of campaigns don't end up delivering. I funded 3 products that never got sent to me. It kind of failed, right, because of this reason. So I just a note or a tip for people thinking about not necessarily expanding to China, but doing business in China in terms of hardware. I think that's the most popular use case in Silicon Valley.
Right. So my key takeaway here, and the first question of why. So basically, what you're saying is just don't do it. Yeah, it's too hard. So
it's not don't do it.
But yeah,
do it the right way. Right. It takes time to build relationships.
So who's still do you still want to go? Do you want to expand to China or go global? Who still want to go global? Come on. All right. Okay. So this is a tough crowd, Yeah, they still, no matter what you said, they want to go global. So now let's go to question. This is the question. How? And you have experiences. You've done it. Okay. Let's give your what the do's and don'ts and how to do it. Okay, I want to go global now. I'm ready.
Well, all right. Here's what helped me. I actually had a friend that did it. He, American guy, moved to China, built his own school, got extorted twice by landlords, had to pay people off. Was miserable for a few years, had to learn Mandarin, and is like a tough SOB after that situation. And I kind of started working with him. He was a friend of mine from college, and I just remember being like, wow, like if this guy can do this, I could pull something. I'm not even moving to China, right? I'm trying to do something between, but that was, I would say, the first thing was like there was some inspiration there that I could do the seemingly impossible. Now the second thing was you need, as you said, guanxi is very important, right? You need a really good network. And you have to put in the time for that network. You're not just gonna go on a trip and meet some people and be like, I got a network. You've got to make sure that the people you're talking to and working with are legitimate. I mean, a lot of people say a lot of things, talk a lot, say this, and you get distracted, then nothing happens, right? You've got to who's real, who's serious, who's been referred to you by people that you trust, and you just kind of do it one step at a time. You're not going to go in there and start doing deals because people got to get to know you, right? And they want to see you a few times, and they may talk about doing deals, but it may not happen for a while. I'm talking like a year, 2 years, right? It depends. Now, there's different types of people. There's some who have spent time in America. They like to kind of talk direct and go fast and do things. But even still, you have to be very careful, very patient. And so whatever it is you're doing, you should be have a strategy where you're making money or raising money or doing something along the way, where you don't have to get something done in China, right? It's not critical because your patience may wear thin. I'm the kind of person that's entrepreneurs, you want to get something done, let's go, let's move. And my partner, Huixin, she always has to tell me, all right, look, this is how things are done in China. You have to go at this pace. You have to wait. They're gonna have a dinner. You're gonna meet here again. You're gonna come back. We just have to keep getting to know them, and that's just how it works, right? And so I have to go with the flow, right? Get the harmony going. So it's
the yin and the yang.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's true. There's you gotta feel right. They have to like you. The harmony has to you have to feel it, and then things just start moving. So that I would say was the biggest lesson for me to moving things along.
And I think for the ones who are actually moving to the US, and you're facing exactly the same problem. You know, here it's not like, okay, let's have lunch, or no, they don't know lunch here. It's coffee. It's always coffee. Okay, it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you know, quick. You know, it's not like an hour, 2 hours, like Google do in Europe, for example. But the so it's interesting to see that you know, culture. It's one. I mean, you have to know the customer. Either if you go to China, you go to Europe, or if you're coming here, if you're here, then you really have to adapt to the users here. Cheryl.
I want to say real quick, one easy way to enter a new market is through accelerators, incubators, as well as co-working spaces. Like this is a really pretty co-working space. Like the one we built, a Magic Accelerator program, is very similar to Startup Chile, if you've heard of it. So the government, to attract entrepreneurs to Latin America or Southeast Asia, and then now China with Tencent, right, with WeStart. I think WeStart is probably a different model, but at least for Magic and Startup Chile, the government offered funding and a one-year visa for you to enter the country, and a space for 3 to 4 months or 5 months, in some cases a year, and then they provide the mentorship and the network for you, or at least help you ease into it. Eventually, you have to make your own networks, right? So these are good places to start to look into, and you can Google them, I'm sure. And then if not, if you don't, like I'm sure Tencent's model takes investment, and they take they give you an investment in exchange for an equity, which is fine as well if you're really invested in that market, right? Co-working space is another way where usually they don't take equity, and you know, usually co-working spaces are the central node of the startup ecosystem. For example, in Thailand, you know, Indonesia, all the co-working spaces are where the VCs and the entrepreneurs go to. So that's a good start.
Yeah, I think I second that. I mean, I've been to China several times, and a lot through accelerators, hacks, for example, if you're doing hardware. And I mean, I knew nothing about the suppliers and how many margins they're going to take from me. But the guys from hacks, they know everything. They're based here, so it's a great shortcut actually to find help through accelerators. They've done this. They're even going to put money on your company. And we talk about 500 startups. They have a program for Asia as well. Hacks is another one. Plug and play. Yeah, go through those accelerators. They will put money on. It will help you. They will give you the network. They will give you the advice, and you will have to actually be. And they understand. They understand that you're impatient. You need to do things, like yesterday. So, Sandira.
Something I've seen over and over, either as an entrepreneur or an advisor, is a certain determination. I do think it makes a difference if you feel that there's a no failure option and that you can only go back empty-handed. So I don't know if that might be a little bit different than what you were saying, but adapting to a new place, a new culture, a new country takes everything out of you. And especially, if you're a startup with that size, it's going to require you to go, from what I've seen, beyond the purely transactional mode. So adapting to the culture, learning, this extra curiosity, these extra resources you're going to put in to make it a success. And
so what you're saying is that if you want to succeed, you have to move there, no matter where.
And it's not necessarily moving there, but have a level of investment where you can't really, where the departure point is just not enough for you anymore. So if you have a comfort zone, like if you're strong in a certain market, it's going to be more difficult to come here and make it. What I see over and over is a French company, for example, they'll be #1 in their market, and they come here and they're like, hey, we're #1 where we're from, it's going to be a piece of cake. And what I recommend is if you're a startup, in Accelerator or not, is that you think globally. You don't have to go global right away, but that you have a global mindset. Because what's likely to happen is you're going to be working on your local market for like 1 or 2 years, and then by the time you're ready to go somewhere, you're already going to have local competitors. And so you're basically starting from scratch, entering that market. So that's one case. But no, what I was saying is basically is Indiana Jones strategies. You know, you're turning back and you're seeing that the bridge doesn't exist anymore. And so you have no way but to move forward.
Right. So, and just a quick tip, I mean, if you have American investors in your company, your startup, they want, the number one thing they want is they want to see you. They want you to be next to them, so you know they can choke if anything happens. But they are, you know, they want to see, if you're a European company, they want to see the CEO, they want to see one of the top level management here locally. So I mean, I'm not sure about China if Chinese investors would require this, but I mean, for American investors, it's very clear. They don't want to invest in a company somewhere and have nobody that actually can take decisions close to them. Ben,
sure. So many good points. I guess I'll just add a couple. It is very hard to trust, like, it's hard to find well-intended partners. I think this is especially in China, but I think everywhere. You don't know who's like really on your side versus somebody who has their own interest in mind, and you're like a really convenient path to that. One of the best ways to overcome this, if you can find it, is an investor who's already in the ecosystem. Because once they've invested, the incentives are already, like, they want your growth and they want you to succeed. And there's somebody you can really lean on to make introductions or help you understand what in this ecosystem actually benefits me versus all these other partners who it may really be very hard to understand the motivations of, especially if you're trying to get over the cultural differences as well. They could obscure something that you can see through. Two would be really do user research. This is one of the biggest problems I see with companies based in China coming to the US, is that they are making a product, well, I'm working with physical products, they're trying to make products for customers they don't talk to or can't talk to. And that makes it, you know, you're just throwing darts in the dark. You're getting lucky if you hit something, but it's really challenging. So if you're going somewhere and you're trying to make a product for users that are not the users that you're surrounded with, you need deep research with those customers, and you need to be building for them. You can't just drop in something that you've made because it meets your needs and the users you know. And then third, just talent is everything. I know Indiegogo's we've had great luck as we've been pushing to China because we've found some people to work with who are just incredibly smart and know the ecosystem really well and can help us make some of these decisions and figure out who we should be talking to and where to go. But it's really, you really need people who can do that cross-border thing. I think you mentioned this earlier, but somebody who has really done both sides and can be the bridge, because unless you are very deeply in that culture already, you are probably not the bridge. You're just somebody on one side of that bridge.
So just to be the devil's advocate, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of stories, I mean, horror stories about, you know, mostly European companies. Okay, I'm coming to the US. Okay, I'm going to hire an American. And he's going to do some magic, and then, you know, a year after, they've lost so much money, equity is, you know, gone. And so, what do you think? I mean, you mentioned about talent. Maybe Nora, you have also the experience. So, you know, when you come to a new market, what should you do in terms of hiring?
It is not a fast talent search, it's just finding the right person. Like, the advice I got when I was looking, like, hey, we should find somebody to help us in China, is it's a minimum year search for a GM for China. That, like, it takes that long to do the vetting, and that it's also really, like, if you want to find somebody who's really going to be your lead somewhere, that person is going to be smart and capable enough to just have their own startup. Like, why should they be working for you if they can do that? And that's the level of competency you need. I do think it's different in different markets. I think China is just, especially coming from the US, is very hard. Other countries can be different. Like, I think France to the US, there's probably enough cultural overlap that you can, I know very successful French founders who were the lead themselves in the US. But yeah, I mean, I've heard horror stories of people getting that talent too.
But that's great advice. Yeah. Take your time, you know, finding the right person. You know, no.
So with the companies that we work with, we have a very standardized process. right? So our team, all of us have worked at global companies, taken companies global, and so we try to synthesize what we have learned and especially what we have done wrong in the past and come up with a framework such that you can do it in a standardized fashion. And I think it all boils down to do your homework and don't wing it, right? I think that's sort of the underlying theme of what everyone has said so far. In fact, Nora, when she first gave her input, said, oh, we need to do this and this and this. You know, look at our market, look at ourselves, hire the right people. And for us, what we help our clients do is figure out, well, what are the right criteria to consider when we are going global so that we can then tell, should we go into this market, yes or no? And if yes, when are we ready? So it's about looking at the market itself. What are the different characteristics that would make it an appropriate and lucrative, right, sustainably lucrative market for you? Because you have to think about the cost, right? Somebody said it's going to cost a lot of money, and you have to have the right expectations for your own company and your investors that you're not going to be profitable right away. It's not going to fund itself right away. And so that's one aspect. Look at the external factors. Then you have to look at the internal factors. Do we have the right expertise and the bandwidth to handle it? Right? Because if you're a small startup, it could sink you. And so for that, what we do is we actually involve all the different functions of the company. So the conversation isn't just concentrated among the folks who are sort of on the front lines in sales usually, or CEO, sales and business development, but rather we involve the engineering team, the customer support team, the finance, the legal, so that you have a cross-functional collaboration and there are no surprises. Because what we often find is you go into a new market, everybody gets super excited, right? You close a big deal, yay. And then some of the folks on the team is like, wait, I'm not prepared to, invoice in this currency. I don't know how the taxation works. Do we need to establish an entity in India in order to do business there? And so it becomes this fire drill. And the worst thing you could do to your international strategy is to fail and make everybody think, oh, international sucks on your first try.
So just before you start, Nora, we're going to open for questions just after this. So get your questions ready and go ahead, Nora.
So you all are right, and I did all of those mistakes, so I can talk about it. So I would actually put talent first, because to the point of Sandira, when you go global, well, it's a human who's actually going somewhere alone most of the time, all across the world, working alone. So I'm talking about coming from France and moving here. It's 9 hours time difference.
You were the talent. It'd be interesting if Nora, in this case, it's interesting because she's the talent. She's the GM that was sent here from the headquarters.
Well, I wasn't all the time. I mean, it took me 2 years to get to the point I am now. So.
Share with us.
But so there is a 9 hours time difference. So that means 3 p.m. here, it's midnight in France. So if I have a problem, if the website is down, anything happens, I'm on my own, and I have all the customers calling me, because I'm the face of the company here. So you need to have someone you can trust in the other country you want to go to make sure that person can handle all of that. So that means if you're the CEO, try to be there. I had troubles in the beginning because I'm not the CEO of Sculpteo. At the time I was just a sales account, that was it. But we're really a small company, so sales account was already like number 2, so that was good. But you need to have someone, if it's not you as a CEO, send someone who actually you trust, someone who knows your service, who knows your product by heart, who won't, like this will be able to resolve an issue, or at least to find the words, to make like the issue was resolved, even if it's not. So really have someone you can trust over there, and someone who's also able to adapt themselves to the country, also on a personal level. So even if you have a top killer in your team and you want to send that person, make sure that that person will actually understand and be able to learn from new culture. So for me, I had to learn not being late to a meeting. It can sound stupid, but in France, if you're not 10 minutes late, well, that means you're a little bit too hungry. Here, you better be on time, otherwise your meeting is cancelled. Took me 2 years to learn that, so I'm just telling you this, like, it's free. So small things like that, but that will actually make the difference when you're actually in business, because again, you're alone here. So for us, it took 2 years to actually build the team. So now we are a team of 7, have a factory, we're actually printing here in San Leandro. But again, it took 2 years to build just building the factory. Take the decision to build the factory took 1.5 years, even though I had all of my customers here in the Bay Area for the US. And all of my customers were actually asking me and pushing me to have a factory. Because indeed, it's not making a lot of sense. They're ordering something, they feel it's from here, it's actually printed in France, shipping from France here, and they're like, well, 3D printing is supposed to help me saving the planet, right? I mean, I can print right here. Why would I use a service that's actually shipping from France? And, well, why did you reply to this? Except, like, well, it's very expensive, sorry. So it took 1.5 years to actually show to my leadership in France that, yes, our customers were here, and this is the plan. You know, if I'm having a factory here, I can grow by, you know, so much %. So I have to give the numbers. You need to know your market, to know where you want to go, to build your own roadmap when you're somewhere. Because you need to have a roadmap when you're going, like knowing like, okay, I'm going to the US, I'm going to China, I'm going wherever I'm going for those reasons. Either my customers are here, this is where I want to go, I want those customers to be, you know, this market to be my customer, whatever the reason is. So you need to stick a little bit to this roadmap, but you also need to adapt yourself. The point where we moved here was not to build a factory. Like in 2012, I had to tell my CEO, oh yes, I'm going to the US. In 2 years, we're actually building a factory. He wouldn't believe me. He would say, no, we're building everything here. I mean, I'm not doing this. And here we go. So you need to still keep a little bit of room for adaptation because you will need to, you don't know what tomorrow will be. You don't know if this country is really where you need to be, if your market is really here. So you need to be able to adapt yourself. And that means not only the person you're sending, but the entire company, because you're going to change things for the company when you're going global.
Could you have succeeded without actually moving here? Just being in a plane, basically, 1 week every 2 weeks, flying, and then being this, here but not here. Or do you think that the actual physical move to the US was important?
I think you need to be here, because I don't remember who said that, but you need to build a network, and you won't build a network if you're not here. Because I believe going to China, from what I understand, is probably a little bit similar than coming here from Europe, because coming here from Europe, we felt that we knew the market. We're like, oh, well, we're number 1 in Europe, that's going to be easy in the US. I mean, just speaking English and that's it. Well, no, it's not at all. But you need to build a network, you need to know the people. And so you won't if, you're here 1 week and not here the next one to do the follow-up, to do the meetings, because your customers are the ones setting the agenda here. Your prospects are the ones setting the agenda. If I want to meet with, I'm going to say, Facebook, I mean, it's their agenda. If they want to meet me, they're going to tell me, you come. It's not going to be the other way around. And saying, oh, wait, I'm going to be here in 3 months. Can we do this then? No, you're not going to lose the prospect. Right. So,
and it's very important because here, I mean, there's another, beyond networking, the other thing that's important is serendipity. Things happen, you don't know when or why. It's just, Ben, you're not doing hardware, so Ben is not going to help you, but actually maybe Ben knows someone that knows someone.
Ben might help me.
Exactly. So that's why it's networking, yes, guangxi, and serendipity. Some people call it luck, but you have to work hard.
You have to make your own luck, so you have to be on site.
Any questions? Yes.
Well, first I want to say this.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Anthony, and the first thing I want to say is this was an extremely sobering panel for anyone thinking of going global. I want to ask Cheryl a question because she started off by presenting a very intriguing opportunity by saying Southeast Asia is a 600 million person market. But the thing is, that 600 million includes many poor people. I'm particularly interested in Southeast Asia because this year I went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. And Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar are some of the poorest countries in the world. Vietnam's also very poor. And so my question is, in your experience, what are the unique opportunities for startups in countries that are so comparatively poor, and how can these developing countries support startups?
That's a great question, and you're totally right that most of Southeast Asia is poor, but there's also Singapore, which is, I can't remember their GDP, but it's nowhere near poor. I think it's even like maybe comparable to the US, or if not better. I think the cost of living in Singapore is higher than here in some cases, in some countries, some states in the US. Right, so when you build a startup in Southeast Asia, usually you have a strategy where you launch in 2 or 3 markets. You want to test locally first, and then you want to quickly raise money. It's very funny, right? In Southeast Asia, you have to raise money to expand to Southeast Asia quickly, and here you're like, don't raise money, prove your distribution first, get users before you raise money. I've actually changed my mind when I went back to Southeast Asia, which is where I'm from originally, is that you do have to have a lot of capital to launch in those markets, because not everyone is tech savvy, but it is a very mobile first region, so it really depends on your business model. And if you take away, I wouldn't actually launch into Cambodia, Laos, maybe Vietnam, but I would look into Singapore, Malaysia, especially building and operating base in Malaysia, because the talent is there, it's English speaking, it's not as expensive as Singapore. But to register your company in Singapore, because Singapore is like the Delaware LLC, Delaware Corp of Southeast Asia. The tax structure is very efficient there, and the legal regulation there is just a lot simpler. And then Indonesia, so like I would say, if you just take the cities like Singapore, Bangkok, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, and maybe certain parts of Vietnam, and you just take those markets, I think it's about like a 55 million person market that are, pretty well-to-do, right? So obviously the disparity in Southeast Asia is a lot wider, the gap is a lot wider, but there is a growing market of middle-class income and above people who will pay for convenience, and they have family businesses, they're rich, they have a lot of money, so there's a lot of opportunity to serve that market. It's still a relatively big market, but you're right, it's not actually 600 million, but eventually it will get there. Right? So it takes probably like 10 years to build a sustainable company in Southeast Asia, I would say. But if you're there first and you're targeting the right market first, and then eventually in 10 years you will get to, people are not going to be poor forever, hopefully, right? The whole region is coming up. And then Cambodia just opened up doors and things like that. It is very fast growing, especially in certain technology. Like a lot of finance, fintech is still very new. Like internet banking is so not there yet. There's just so much opportunity. E-commerce is growing like crazy in Thailand and Indonesia as well. 300 million of the 600 million people are in Indonesia. So there is a lot of opportunity.
And there's probably some government help. You mentioned stuff in Chile, this, style like this, programs that maybe are started by governments.
Yeah, so you can look into mymagic.my map as the accelerator program that I started. It's called Magic Accelerator Program, where we give you funding and a 1-year visa to launch in Southeast Asia.
I just want to add one anecdote. So Anthony, you said you're looking at the Southeast Asia as the whole market, and the number you mentioned was the population. So I think the fundamental difference you need to recognize, population does not equal total addressable market, right? So what part of the population is actually going to potentially buy a product, and what is their willingness to pay? And in certain emerging markets, the willingness to pay is actually pretty high because the selection is limited. And some countries, or population in certain countries, are willing to sort of leapfrog to the next best thing. So I deal, and it sounds like you're doing a consumer product, but I deal with a lot of business-to-business product, and so they have systems that have been running since like the 80s, right? So they're not going to switch to like an SAP. They can go to the latest and greatest, coolest, like SaaS-based enterprise software. And so you can actually get folks to adopt it sooner than sometimes companies in Europe that have legacy systems in place. And I had one client that was in the consumer mobile space. They were based out of Brazil, And I was looking at their data, and for a period of time, they had one app that was like the second highest grossing one in Brazil, and they were charging a price that was higher than the one they had for the App Store here in the States. And so, you know, I did not expect that at all, but the Brazilian customers are very, very willing to pay for something that fulfills their needs. So you just have to go on the ground and do their homework, and hopefully with the support of some folks on the ground.
You have a question?
Yeah. Well, I just want to start by saying what an amazing panel this has been. I'm actually from France, grew up in the Bay Area, and I've been living in China, so it's like, and so, yeah, I went to French schools here in San Francisco. But I'm just curious about on the incubator side. I know that here in San Francisco, there's like French Tech Hub, and then there's now Tencent WeStart that's establishing operations here. How are these different incubator spaces, especially in our increasingly globalizing world, looking to bridge those barriers and encourage more programming across national barriers, encouraging, you know, we're talking about a lot of, you know, US, China, China, US, but brought in a lot of these other nations. So I'm curious to hear how those new partnerships are happening and what opportunities are out there, even here in the Bay Area or globally.
Bo should answer that.
Yeah, Bo. So yeah, go ahead. But you know, Indiegogo is kind of an accelerator.
Kind of. I mean, I think we talked to a lot of accelerators, and I think there aren't a lot of accelerators that are necessarily pushing people to do global who are focused on that. So I know some, like, I know accelerators that are owned by Chinese, like, giant Chinese manufacturing conglomerates, and their goal is we want to find cool hardware startups that we're going to go bring to China and sell millions of because our strength is the distribution or manufacturing network here, and we want to source things that our customers will like. So, or I know, like, for a lot of French, like, the French government is pushing startups so hard that there's a lot of things where they're doing some government push that's doing that.
Right.
Usually
it's called the French tech ticket.
Yeah,
so actually,
yeah, like CES.
They pay you to stay in Paris for 6 months a year. They pay for the visa, but you don't need a visa. No. Yeah, they pay for that startup in Chile. And Chile was really the example.
But I think there's usually some kind of financial motivation to do it. Like, I don't think for most start incubators, like, and I think the sectors are like don't go international. Like, you don't want to push your startups to go launch internationally. You want to say, shut up and focus on the customers here and get some revenue. So I think it's rare to see that unless the institution who's running an incubator has a really strong motivation, either for their own profit, a government interest that's pushing them to do that, or it's it meets a larger need that, hey, we know that we're in this country, we have a really big need for X kinds of products, and we don't have enough startups there, so we're going to go find X kind of product somewhere else, and that can work really well.
So I think it's, I mean, that's quite an irony. I mean, there's no such thing as a U.S. accelerator that will push you to go, outside the U.S. It's most of the, if you call, looking for those accelerators, they're all inbound. There's a German accelerator, Scandinavian, Denmark Innovation Center is here. There is the Italian, the Spanish, the French. So the Chinese, Japanese with Jetro. I mean, everybody is outside of the U.S. Have set up programs to help their companies, their local companies, to come here. The other way around is not that as evident.
From the little that I've heard from Yin, I think that's what Tencent WeStart is trying to do, is looking for startups here that have an interest to go to China. I think you should speak to Bo about it in his presentation. I think he...
And that's a great segue. I mean, the other side is that we might not have any government support, but you have a lot of those companies, the large companies. I mean, if you see the SAP of the world, the Oracle or Google, they will take you abroad. And if they think, and that's actually much easier because you're here in the U.S. We all talk the same sort of business language. We know how it works. I love your product. I know I have a need. On Intel, for example, I know my factory in Israel needs actually your software. I'll invest in you, and I'll take you there, and I'll take you everywhere I am. So I think maybe the private companies, those large companies, always have a what do you call it, a internal investment arm, and that's maybe one bet that you can try.
Maybe another reason for that is that when you go for an incubator, an accelerator locally, you actually go there to get mentors. That was actually the second part of my answer I forgot when I was talking earlier on how to go globally. Well, you need mentors. And you need mentors personally, but you need also mentors for your business. And a great way to have those mentors is through accelerators. But the thing is, they will give you mentors locally because that's what they know. So I don't think it's really, I don't even think they could really give you a good advice to go abroad because that's not the market, that's not what they know. But Jean-Baptiste, I think you're totally right. Going with integrated incubators of big groups. If you want to have different options and see, really if your product can actually work on different markets in different countries, I think that's a good way to go because it's in their interest as well to make you as globally as possible.
I've come across one accelerator program that is focused actually on taking companies global, but it's not based here. It's based in Luxembourg and it's run by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So they're located in a place that has a lot of professional services, and so they benefit from finding fast-growing tech companies, taking them global, and then in the process helping them grow such that they'll have more need for the tax advice, the entity setup, and all the other services that PwC is known for. So yeah, if you're in Europe next, you can stop by Luxembourg and check them out. I can introduce you to somebody who moved there.
Great. So I know we're running out of time, but okay, we have one more question. Okay. Introduce.
My name is Peter Chen. I work on the global business marketing team at Facebook. My question is this. When you make a plan for a market which is very unique, such as China, what is your top tip in persuading your bosses or investors that your weirdly looking plan will actually work?
So we have been talking to investors in China, but most investors in China, there's a few ones that have, really good ones that do have like USD accounts, but the point is a lot of the investors in China want to invest in RMB, right? So you need an RMB account. Getting a bank account in China as a foreign company is simple. So it's easier if you have what they call a WFOE, wholly foreign owned entity, which is something we are actually planning to set up probably by the middle of the summer. I would estimate it takes like 3 to 4 months. Hopefully we can get it done in 3. And so if you're going to go through all that effort, you may ask, like, well, just to get money, is it really that valuable? Well, we're actually doing it because we want to have a presence there for a lot of other benefits, right? Like if we're going to be doing customer acquisition there, like we need people on the ground constantly. We need to start building a small team and just be plugged in instead of just constantly flying back and forth. But I would say generally speaking, there are some hubs where you can attract Chinese investors, and we started plugging into those. So kind of similar to incubators, we actually got accepted to an incubator in China called Feimalu, Pegasus Group, and we're the only American company, as far as we know, that's ever been accepted. That being said, they're not really interested in working with us until we get a WFOE set up and kind of show them that we're serious. At the very least that, and they actually want us to like enter the market. But that's there's if you go to China, there are hubs like that. There are other similar ones, but. Yeah, I would just say that, first of all, so just ask why do you want money from China, right? What's the focus of that? For us, I think, obviously, we want to get some connections there, but we're already doing all this work to get connections, so it's kind of at this point, I don't know how much they would add. Yeah, my final thing I would just like to say is, shameless plug for anyone out there, or anyone watching, is that we are opening a Beijing. So if anyone's interested in talking about that, or you think, hey, I want to go to Beijing someday next year, work on an amazing startup in the education space, please come talk to me.
Great. Don't forget your masks. Just kidding. I saw there's someone hand up. Yeah.
For Cheryl,
Go ahead.
For Southeast Asia, for mobile, is it still BBM mostly?
What do you mean, BlackBerry?
Yeah.
No, definitely not. I mean, actually, I'm a BlackBerry ambassador. They gave me a BlackBerry phone, so technically I should say yes. But no, I mean, Android is definitely Android by majority.
Yeah. Wow. BlackBerry. It's like it's been a long time.
I mean, I think BlackBerry is still in the consulting world. Anyone consultants here?
No, they're in software. Well, you know, Nokia is coming back next week with a new old phone. But all right. Well, thank you so much, and join me in thanking our panel for this great conversation.